Hello there, good to see you back. We'll continue with our discussion on PHP. In this session, we'll be taking a look at functions. We'll look at various concepts like function declaration, passing parameters to function, returning value from a function, using default parameters within functions, and we'll also look at pass by value and pass by reference. So we'll start off with the declaration of a simple function in PHP. The concept for today is PHP functions. We'll declare a function. So we have to use the keyword function followed by the function name, and we will just echo a string. Hello, how are you doing? So this is the string we are going to echo. And how to call a function? Just call the name. That's it. So now we have written a function that prints this string to the web page, and we invoke this function by using the function name. Let's take a look at the output. Hello, how are you doing is the output. So we have seen how to declare a very simple function in PHP. Now let's see how to pass a variable to the function. For instance, if I have a variable $value with some value as 2, and how I can pass this, it's $value. So when you're passing a variable, you should also receive that in the function. Let me receive that as $input. And let me print the value that's coming in. Let's print that value that's coming inside the function. That's $input. So what will be the output here? So 2 will be passed to input and input will be printed. The output should be 2. Let's take a look at the output. So we have received the output. Say if we are passing multiple parameters like $input and $input1, and you want to echo both these values that are coming into the function, and we need two values here, so we'll say $value 1 is equal to 3. And how will you pass multiple parameters? It's $value comma $value 1. Now what will be the output? 2 will be mapped to $input and 3 will be copied to input 1. The output will be 2 comma 3. Let's refresh the screen. You're having an error here. That's because we have missed this dollar. So whenever you're using this variable, please don't forget this dollar. So now the output, let's see the output. So it's 2 and 3. Now let's understand the use of return statement in PHP. For instance, I just want to return $input star $input1. So what is that I am performing here is receiving these two variables, multiplying them and returning the value. So whenever I am returning a value, I should be able to receive that here, right? After calling the function, let me receive that in $result. And let's echo the result. Echo $result. So what is that we are performing here is just returning the multiplication of the two values that we receive as input in the function. We are receiving the result here and echoing the result. What will be the result? It will be 6. Let's take a look at the output. Yes. So that's how you return value from within a function. Now let's understand the next concept, default parameters in function. What is a default parameter? For instance, I will assign the value of $input to be 10 here. Let me just echo $input from within the function. Now, the question is, what happens if I just call display without passing any value? So what is that we are doing here? We are just calling display without passing any value, and we have initialized $input to be 10 as a default parameter. So now let's run. Let's check the output. The output is 10. So this is the default parameter. When you're not passing any value, 10 will be the value taken up by input. But if you pass some value, say if I pass dollar value. Now if I'm passing some value here, what will happen? This input will be taking up the value 2 and 2 will be printed to the output. So let's take a look at the output now, 2. So when you're not passing a value, this will be the default value for input. If you're passing a value, whatever value that comes in will be the value for input. That's how you use default parameters with functions in PHP. Now let's take a look at a scenario. Say I'm receiving this input, and what I'm planning to do here is I will return $input star 2. So I'm just multiplying 2 with this input and I'm returning the value. And here what is that I'm going to get is $result is equal to display, and then I'm going to pass the value 2 here. What will be the result? So the result that we are expecting is 2 is coming here, 2 into 2, 4. So 4 should be the result. Very simple calculation, nothing difficult. The question here is, instead of passing 2, what happens if I pass a string to this function? So this function is expecting an int because it's performing some arithmetic operation on the input and returning it. So I'm intentionally passing my name here. My name is a string. So when you pass a string, how the arithmetic operations work? What will happen to this output? Let's check that. So it leads to a fatal error, uncaught type error, unsupported operand types string star int. So what's happening here is Satish, that is passed as part of this function call, is mapped to input, and this function is trying to perform Satish star 2, and then it comes out with this error, that is the operand types are incompatible. Now PHP has come out with a way to prevent this, that is we can declare the types to be strict. So you can perform this declare strict underscore types equal to 1. So what is the use of this? We can mention the type of input that a function is expecting. So what is that we are declaring here is this function is expecting only input types of type integer. So when you're coming out with this kind of a declaration, you should also mention declare strict types equal to 1. Now this function will not accept anything other than an int as an input. So now let's run the same code. Let's see what is the error we are getting. See, now the error is argument 1 $input must be of type int string given. So what is the advantage of this? Instead of taking up the value, performing the computation, and then coming out with this fatal error, now by mentioning the expected data type, what is that we are achieving is we are preventing the function getting that value at this stage, because this is expecting an integer, and if you're passing a string, so an error will be thrown at this stage. It will not get into the function and perform the computation. So how is that you mention what kind of data function is expecting? You have to say declare strict types equal to 1, and you have to mention the data type that your function is expecting. Say this function will be fine if I'm going to pass an integer value. So if I pass 2, so this is going to take 2, multiply that with 2, and then return the result. What happens if I'm expecting a string? How will I mention that? I'll say it's the input is a string, and let me just concatenate $input with CJ and throw the results. Now the function is expecting a string. Let me pass my name. That's it. So what will be the result here? It will be Satish, CJ will be the output. Let's run this code. So you're able to see Satish, CJ as the output that is returned from the function. In case you're passing an integer when a string is expected as input, for instance, if I pass 2, What will happen now? The input expected here is of type string, but we are passing an int. So will this work? It will not work. Again, this error has come up. Argument 1 should be of type string, but an integer is given. I hope you are able to follow this. Now let's understand how we can enforce what kind of data a function can return. For instance, what is that the function is returning here? A string. So I can very well say this function is supposed to return only a string. So this is the return type for this function. And if this function returns anything other than a string, then we are going to get an error. Let me repeat. What is that I am performing here? I'm saying this function will return only a string. So colon string. So this denotes the return type for the function. And if this function returns anything other than a string, we'll get an error. So let's run this. So let's pass a string, a valid input. So now it returns a string, no issues. So you're going to get the output as Satish CJ. In case if you try and return anything other than a string, say let me return some integer value. We are returning an integer value, but what is being expected here? It should return a string. Now there is a mismatch with the return type. So what's going to happen is a fatal error. Return value must be of type string, but int is getting returned. So with declare strict types equal to 1, we can also enforce what kind of value or what kind of data a particular function is supposed to return. I hope you were able to follow this. Now let us look at the difference between pass by value and pass by reference in PHP functions. So let's start off with pass by value. Let's take an integer input, and what we'll do inside this function is we'll just increment the value of the input that's coming in, and then we'll echo the value within the function is dot dollar input. So we are receiving an integer value, incrementing it and displaying the output. Likewise, we'll have a value initialized to something like 2. We'll call the function display dollar value. We'll pass 2 to that function. And after calling that function, we'll echo the value of, instead of saying here value, we'll say dollar num, the value of num after the function call is, so we'll just print num here. So what will be the value of, so what will be the output here? So we are passing 2 to input, and we should not give int here because we are not declared strict type is equal to 1. So now we are getting this 2 and we are incrementing it by 1, and we will be printing the value of input as 3. But this operation will not impact $num, and so the value of num here will be 2. So what's happening here? The value of num is just getting copied to input. So that is pass by value. A copy is being made. So whatever operations you perform on input will not have an impact on num. Now let's execute this. You'll be able to see the output. So the value within the function is 3. The value of num after the function call is 2. So any operations you do here, it will not impact it because only a copy is made. But then if you want to pass the address, that's called pass by reference, right? In PHP, you pass the address of a variable by putting an ampersand. So now instead of a copy, the address of num is getting passed here. So if you perform any operations on input, it will impact the value of num2. Let's take a look at the output. Let's see how things change now. See, now the value within the function is 3. The value outside the function for num is also 3. What it means is we have passed the address. So if we increment input by 1, this num also is getting incremented by 1. It means that we are working with the same address, and after the function call you'll be able to see num got incremented by 1. So that's the output. So this is called pass by reference, and that's how you achieve pass by reference in PHP. And if you don't use an ampersand, that goes with pass by value. So we have looked at some basic concepts in PHP functions today. And what are those concepts? We looked at declaration of functions, passing parameters to functions, and return value from a function. And also we have seen the use of declare strict types equal to 1 and the various scenarios that are associated with it. We've also seen the difference between pass by value and pass by reference. Okay, that's it for now. If you have any questions, you can leave your comments below. And we'll be continuing with other concepts in PHP in the coming sessions. Thank you all for listening. Take care.